the serene landscape of Coniston Water, a ribbon-like lake nestled in the Lake District of England, holds a dark secret beneath its tranquil waters. In 1976, the disappearance of Carol Ann Park, a young mother and teacher, stirred a mystery that would remain unsolved for decades, turning this picturesque location into the backdrop of a haunting tale. Carol Ann Park was a dedicated primary school teacher and a lively, beloved figure in her community. She met Gordon Park in a rather conventional yet romantic setting. They crossed paths as young educators, both passionate about teaching and shaping young minds. Their shared profession and mutual interests in education likely provided a strong initial connection, sparking a relationship that eventually led to marriage. This common ground in their careers set the foundation for what initially seemed like a promising partnership, before it later unraveled under the weight of personal and marital challenges. On July 17, 1976, the Park family had scheduled a day trip to Blackpool. Carol, however, feeling unwell, opted to stay behind in bed. Unbeknownst to her family, this would be the last time they would see her alive. Gordon Park, upon returning from the family outing, claimed to have found their home empty, with Carol's wedding ring left behind and no signs of a struggle. In a move that later raised eyebrows, Gordon did not report his wife missing for 6 weeks. He justified this by citing Carol's past behavior. She had left their home in Lees, near Barrow in Cumbria, twice before, timing her absences with school holidays. Gordon, assuming she had left for another man during the summer break, did not sense immediate alarm. It wasn't until Carol failed to return for the new school term in September that Gordon, through his solicitor, reported her missing and informed her family. Carol and Gordon's marriage painted a picture of a relationship in deep crisis. Both had engaged in extramarital affairs, leading to a custody hearing in 1975 due to their relationship's collapse and Carol's desire to settle with a lover. The custody hearing did not favor Carol, forcing her into the devastating choice of returning to a loveless marriage to be with her children. When the missing person inquiry was launched, it led nowhere. Police informed Gordon that he would be a prime suspect if a body was discovered, yet no evidence immediately surfaced to advance the case. Meanwhile, amidst the absence of concrete evidence, the family harbored suspicions, wondering if Gordon knew more than he admitted. Carol Ann Park's disappearance thus became a complex tapestry of personal struggles, marital discord, and mysterious circumstances. The initial investigation, marred by delays and limited evidence, failed to unravel the truth, setting the stage for a long-standing mystery that would haunt Coniston Water and its surrounding community. On August 13, 1997, a day like any other in the tranquil setting of Coniston Water, a discovery was made that would unearth a mystery buried for over 2 decades. Amateur divers exploring the depths of this serene lake were about to stumble upon a scene so macabre and so unexpected that it would forever alter the narrative of Carol Ann Park's disappearance. As the divers descended 75 feet into the dark, cold depths of Coniston Water, they encountered an eerie sight that seemed more like a scene from a Gothic novel. There, in the perpetual gloom of the lake's bottom, lay a human form curled in the fetal position. The body, which was later confirmed to be that of Carol Park, was dressed only in a nightgown, a haunting image of vulnerability. Adding to the macabre tableau, her eyes were covered with plasters, as if to shield her from the dark fate that had befallen her. The body was intricately wrapped in a canvas rucksack and various plastic bags, meticulously tied with numerous knots. These bags also contained an assortment of items: clothing, shoes, makeup, and, ominously, lead piping, presumably intended to anchor her to this watery grave. In a twist of fate that led to the discovery, the body had landed on an underwater ledge. Had it been discarded mere meters further, it would have likely descended into the abyss, forever concealing the truth of Carol's fate. The post-mortem examination of Carol Park's body painted a gruesome picture. Severe injuries to her skull and face suggested a violent end, initially speculated to involve an ice axe, although this theory was later questioned. The extent of the damage, especially to her teeth, spoke of a brutality that was chilling in its intensity. The body's positioning in the fetal pose was particularly telling. It suggested that Carol's body had been wrapped and weighted soon after her demise, before rigor mortis could set in. However, later insights would note that rigor mortis dissipates within 24 to 48 hours, opening the possibility that the body could have been manipulated after this period had passed. Among the most striking clues were the unusual knots used to secure the bag around Carol's body. These knots bore a striking similarity to those found in Gordon Park's house and boat, a detail that would become a key piece of evidence in the trial that ensued. The discovery of Carol Ann Park's body in 1997 under the waters of Coniston Water was only the beginning of a new chapter in this decades-old mystery. Gordon Park, Carol's husband at the time of her disappearance, soon became the focal point of a controversial and complex legal saga. In a twist of irony, at the time Carol's body was being retrieved from its watery grave, Gordon Park and his third wife, Jenny, were enjoying a cycling holiday in France. The news of the discovery, coupled with footage of police searching their house, reached them, marking a grim end to their vacation. On August 24th, upon their return, Gordon faced the stark reality of his situation. It's been reported that when Gordon was told that Carol's body had been found, his only words were, "Oh dear." The next morning at 8 a.m., he was arrested on suspicion of murder. One of the primary reasons for Gordon's arrest was the intricate knots used to secure Carol's body. His avid interest in sailing and climbing, activities that required proficiency in tying complex knots, mirrored the knots used to truss Carol's remains. This detail, strikingly specific, became a significant point in the case against him. During his interviews with investigators, Gordon's demeanor reportedly did nothing to alleviate suspicions. He was described as extremely emotionless, speaking of his first wife in terms that suggested she was more of an inconvenience than a loved one. This cold portrayal only heightened the suspicions of the authorities. Gordon was charged with the murder of Carol Park and remanded to Preston Prison. However, this confinement was short-lived. After 2 weeks, his solicitor successfully argued for bail, citing insufficient evidence for a continued detainment. The charges were subsequently dropped, with the Crown Prosecution Service stating that there was not enough evidence for a realistic prospect of a conviction. Gordon, upon his release, expressed a desire to put the events behind him and return to normal life. However, this sentiment was not shared by Carol's family, particularly her brother, Ivor Price. Price expressed disgust at how Carol was portrayed during the proceedings, emphasizing that she was not the person depicted in the trial's narrative. Adding to the intrigue, it was reported that Gordon had made a cryptic comment to another inmate, implying Carol deserved it due to infidelity, a statement that cast a shadow over his proclaimed innocence. The year 2004 marked a pivotal turn in the Lady in the Lake case, with Gordon Park facing arrest once again as new leads surfaced, reigniting the investigation into Carol Ann Park's murder. The murder file, which had never been officially closed, sprang to life with the confession of Michael Wainwright, a former cellmate of Gordon's from his short 1997 prison stay. This confession, coupled with a meticulous re-examination of the discovery site at Coniston Water, led to a significant find. Investigators recovered a piece of Westmoreland green slate, a stone matching the rocks from the wall of the Park family's bungalow, adding a tangible but circumstantial link to Gordon. The ensuing trial at Manchester Crown Court stretched over 10 weeks, a marathon of legal and forensic scrutiny. The prosecution didn't possess a single definitive piece of evidence directly pointing to Gordon. Instead, they assembled the narrative from circumstantial elements: the knots used to bind Carol's body, the rocks used for weighting, and an ice axe initially suspected as the murder weapon. Central to the prosecution's case were the statements from two of Gordon's former cellmates, including Michael Wainwright. One of these inmates, noted for severe learning difficulties and a mental age of 9, was deemed incapable of fabricating or retaining imaginary stories, lending a stark authenticity to his claims. Both inmates independently asserted that Gordon, possibly in moments of vulnerability, confessed his guilt. The prosecution painted a chilling picture of the murder. They suggested Gordon initially attempted to strangle Carol, but resorted to using a heavy weapon, likely not the ice axe itself, but something similar, to deliver fatal blows to her head when she resisted. Pathologist Dr. Edmund Tapp described the attack as consisting of 2 big, heavy, crushing blows, inflicting severe damage to Carol's face and skull. Further adding to the prosecution's theory was the speculation that Carol's body was stored in a chest freezer for a period before being disposed of in Coniston Water. This theory suggested a calculated and premeditated approach to the crime and its concealment. Gordon, throughout, maintained his innocence, claiming that he and Carol had an open marriage, suggesting alternative scenarios for her demise. However, this defense did little to sway the direction of the trial. Ultimately, the jury, tasked with piecing together this mosaic of circumstantial evidence, found Gordon Park guilty. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 15 years. The judge emphasized the terrible concealment of the body in the sentencing. Gordon Park's conviction brought a semblance of closure to a case that had lingered in ambiguity for nearly 3 decades. Yet it was a closure built on circumstantial evidence and fraught with debate over the interpretation of facts and testimonies. The Lady in the Lake case thus settled into a controversial conclusion, leaving lingering questions about justice, truth, and the depths to which secrets can be buried. The conviction of Gordon Park for the murder of Carol Ann Park, a case shrouded in circumstantial evidence and conjecture, faced renewed scrutiny in the years following his sentencing. In 2007, an appeal campaign launched by his solicitors and supporters brought fresh attention to the controversial verdict. Clarion solicitors representing Gordon Park announced in December 2007 their intention to appeal the conviction. This appeal was grounded on new evidence not presented at the original trial, raising hopes among Gordon's family and friends for a possible quashing of the conviction and a retrial. They maintained that no single piece of evidence indisputably pointed to Gordon as the murderer. Supporters of Park bolstered the appeal with claims of police misconduct. They produced a signed statement from a key prosecution witness alleging that police officers had influenced their testimony by putting words in their mouth and dictating what to say in court. This revelation, if true, cast a shadow on the integrity of the trial and the evidence presented. Despite these assertions, the appeal bid faced a setback in November 2008. 3 judges at the Court of Appeal in London reviewed the case and ultimately rejected the appeal. The new evidence, which included a challenge to the geological evidence used in the trial, was deemed insufficient to raise reasonable doubts about the safety of the conviction. The appeal focused on the geological evidence linking the rock found with Carol's body to the rock from the wall outside the Park's home. Geologist Andrew Moncrief argued that this rock was indistinguishable from others in the area, rendering it meaningless as conclusive evidence. However, Lord Justice Keane, in dismissing the appeal, stated that the geological evidence was only a minor component of a much stronger circumstantial case against Gordon Park. The rejection of the appeal left the case of Carol Ann Park's murder mired in a complex web of circumstantial evidence, contested testimonies, and lingering doubts. The quest to either vindicate or definitively prove Gordon Park's guilt continued to elude a clear resolution, epitomizing the challenges of seeking absolute truth in the murky depths of a case as convoluted and emotionally charged as the Lady in the Lake mystery. The saga of the Lady in the Lake case took a somber turn on January 25, 2010, when Gordon Park, convicted for the murder of his wife Carol Ann Park, was found dead in his prison cell, marking a tragic and controversial end to a case that had spanned over 3 decades. On the morning of his 66th birthday, Park was found hanged and unconscious in his cell at Garth Prison. Despite immediate attention, he was pronounced dead at the scene. The circumstances pointed to suicide, with reports suggesting that Park had used a ligature to inflict the fatal injuries upon himself. Notably, Park had not been assessed as a risk for suicide, raising questions about the oversight in his monitoring and care while in custody. The news of Park's death was met with shock and devastation by his family. His son, Jeremy Park, in a poignant response, emphasized their unwavering belief in Gordon's innocence, stating that the family was completely devastated and continued to believe his innocence 100%.
We don't trust the police, I think it's fair to say, but in terms of what's important, I just want to know who killed my mum. And I'd like my dad to come out of prison.
This steadfast assertion from his family kept alive the debate over Park's guilt or innocence, even in the wake of his death. Gordon Park's suicide was interpreted in various ways by the public and the media. Some viewed this tragic act as an implicit admission of guilt, a final act of escape from the burden of a crime. Others, however, saw it as the last resort of a man overwhelmed by the weight of a wrongful conviction and the loss of hope for exoneration. Gordon Park's death brought a definitive end to his personal involvement in the Lady in the Lake case, but it did little to resolve the lingering questions and controversies that surrounded the case. The debate over his guilt or innocence, fueled by the circumstantial nature of the evidence and the contested testimonies, continued to echo in the public consciousness. In a late twist to the long-standing Lady in the Lake case, November 2019 saw the initiation of a second appeal for Gordon Park, posthumously challenging his conviction. This appeal was spurred by new findings from the Criminal Cases Review Commission, or the CCRC. The CCRC's investigation brought forward two critical points that questioned the integrity of the evidence used in Park's trial. Firstly, it was revealed that Gordon Park's DNA was not found on the rope used to bind Carol's body, a significant detail that potentially undermined the prosecution's case. Secondly, the reliability of one witness statement was called into question due to allegations of police coercion, suggesting a possible compromise in the trial's fairness. Despite these potentially game-changing revelations, the appeal faced a setback. In May 2020, the appeal was rejected, and no posthumous pardon was granted to Gordon Park. This decision left the original conviction standing and maintained Park's status as the person legally responsible for Carol Ann Park's murder. The Lady in the Lake case, as it came to be known, remains a blend of solved and unsolved elements. While a conviction was made, the lingering doubts and unanswered questions keep the case in the realm of mystery. The depths of Coniston Water may have given up one secret, but the full truth of what happened to Carol Ann Park on that summer day in 1976 may forever remain elusive, locked away in its dark waters.